Hey everyone, today we're going to be building this tic-tac-toe game in the browser with TypeScript. I realized I've been coding for 3 years and I've never made a tic-tac-toe game, so today I thought I should. And you can see the boxes have this cool little animation. They have a box shadow. The boxes change colors, and when you click on a box, it gives you a specific color for that box. So X's are magenta and then O's are yellow. And you play the game, and once the game's finished, you get a winner. You can click play again, and of course you can play again, right? So this is the general gist of what we're trying to do. Okay, and that time winner is O. So let's get started. You're gonna need VS Code, and you're going to need npm node installed on your computer. So if you don't have that, go to just Google Node.js, click the download button, Google VS Code, click the download button, or use your favorite text editor. Totally fine, and let's get started. TypeScript, tic-tac-toe. Okay, so go ahead and create an empty folder and open it in your text editor. I just called mine tutorial tic-tac-toe. And once you're there, we're going to need to install Parcel globally. Parcel is the bundler, and it's going to do all the configuration for us, so we have very little to do. So that's great, and we want to use that. So we're going to do npm I, and we're going to say parcel-g for global. Once you have that, hit enter. I'm not going to hit enter because I've already installed it, and let Parcel install on your machine. Okay, now you might want to can this terminal and reopen it. And once you've done that, then you can say parcel -- version. And I only suggest you can and reopen it because sometimes it doesn't recognize it. You have to open a new terminal. So parcel -- version, hit enter, and it'll show you what version of Parcel you're using. I downloaded mine a little while ago. Yours is probably newer than mine. That's totally fine. So as long as you have it installed, you're good to go there. The next thing we need to do is we need to init and run npm init to initiate a project. So npm init -y, because we're just going to use default values, and that's totally fine. So npm init -y, hit enter, and you see we have created a package.json file. And the next thing we're going to need is the tsc command, which comes with the TypeScript library. So we can install that globally too by doing npm I and TypeScript. So I is just short for install, -g for global. Hit enter. Again, I already have mine installed, so I'm not going to do that. And then you can say tsc -- version to make sure it's installed. If you don't see it, again, kill your terminal and reopen it. Okay, and you can see I have TypeScript installed here. So now we want to use that tsc command to initiate a TypeScript.json file. We don't have to do any configuration in it. We just want to uncomment some of the options. So we can say tsc -init. It might be -- Okay, yep, just tsc -init works. And we get this ts.config file. And the first thing we want to do is create our HTML file, right? Now we have the setup done, we're going to start coding. So you can click on the plus icon here, or you can create it from your terminal, whatever you want to do. Index.html, just like that. Hit enter. Okay, and you have a blank HTML file. If you hit the exclamation point or the bang symbol and hit tab, it's going to fill out the basic information for you. If you don't have that, you can probably go to extensions and install Emmet. But you should have that. Probably it comes with VS Code, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that. You'll have to check it out. So title, tic-tac-toe. We're going to just create an H1 called tic-tac-toe. So H1, and we're going to be a bit obnoxious and leave it in all caps for now. Tic-tac-toe, just like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and create the HTML layout that we need. I kind of did this piece by piece when I initially made it, but for this project I think it makes more sense to show you kind of the layout for this, right? So we're going to have our title, and then we want to have our game board, and we're just going to create a generic container for our game board, and then we will within JavaScript dynamically make that game board. So let's just create a container for it. We're going to call it just a div, and we're going to give it a class of game, if it stays in there, game container, class of game container. There we go. I don't know why that tab's outside of the quotes sometimes, but it does. Okay, so we have that, and then we need a winner class, because right, so when I was showing you the example, we had the title, the game board, and then blank is winner, right? So we want to say just another H1, and we want to give it a class of winner. And that's okay for now. We're going to leave it empty because we're going to dynamically generate that message. Underneath, we need a button, and our button says play again, right? So we had our play again button. Title, board container, is there a winner, and then our button. So we're just gonna have a button for now, and we'll just give it a class of button, which is totally fine because we're only gonna have one button in the game. And that's all we're gonna do for now in the HTML. So go ahead and save that. And now that we've made that, just this HTML outline, we want to open our project in the browser and make sure it's working properly so far, right? So in the terminal down at the bottom, you're going to want to say npx parcel, and you want to use that index.html file. So npx parcel index.html and hit enter. You're going to notice it takes a second to spin up, and it's going to say server running at http localhost 1234. So you can control click on that, or you can go to your browser. I'm going to control click, or you can go to your browser and type in localhost 1234 like this, and it will pop up for you. Notice our button's empty. We haven't added any text in there yet, but we have our tic-tac-toe, our div game board is empty, and our message is empty, so it's very small like this, but it is there. And you can prove it's there by inspecting, either Control-Shift-I or right-click inspect, and you can go here and you can see there's a winner class there and a button a winner element and a button element here, right? They exist, they're just not really showing because there's nothing in them. So let's put text in our button. Let's put the play again there. So let's go back, and let's say, here we go, play again. Save it, and you don't have to refresh or anything. You just go back to the browser. Okay, you might have to refresh, and you can see play again is here. So now we have the button set up, and we see that it's working. Let's continue on, add some styling to this. Okay, and let's get in the styling that we can before we get into the game logic and all that. So let's get in the styling that we can. So the first thing we want to do is you're going to notice that none of this is centered, and in our the demo that I showed you, everything was centered, right? So we want to be able to center these different things. So to do that, we want to go back to here, and we're going to create a style.css sheet. So new file, style.css. This is where we're going to put all our styling in, and we want to link that to our sheet here. So we can say link href, equals dot slash style.css, and we want to self-close it like this. Save it. And we just want to see if it works. So we're going to say h1, and we're going to say text align center, right? Because we want to center our text in the board. So both of our h1s are winning message, which isn't there yet, and our title tic-tac-toe we want to center. So save that, and if we go back to our board and refresh, okay, nothing works. Probably because we have it linked wrong, right? Even as a developer for a couple years, I linked this stuff wrong, right? So you want to Google how to link CSS to HTML, and it doesn't really matter which option we pick as long as we pick one. So link relation style sheet and then href. So I just missed relation style sheet, right? So it's okay to Google stuff, just something to keep in mind. So let's go back here. We want to say relation equals style sheet, and that's probably going to make a difference. So save that, head back over. Okay, yep. So we just missed relation style sheet, and tic-tac-toe is centered. Now the other thing we want to do is center this play again button. You're going to notice this didn't center because it's not an H1. I tried also just centering a button with text align, doesn't work. So spent a little bit of time trying to figure that one out, right? So what you actually want to do is go into our HTML. We're going to wrap the button in a I'm just calling it end container. Or you can call it button container, really, I think is a better name for it. So div. And we're going to give it a class of button, button container like this. And we want to put our button inside of this div. And the reason we're doing this is because we're going to make this div a flex box, and we're going to center this button on it. So now that we've done that, let's go back to our style, because you're going to notice nothing's changed in here, right? If you refresh or Control R for refresh, nothing's changed, but we need to add the CSS to make this button container work. So back in style, we want to, let's make sure I'm giving you the right information here. Here we go, okay. We're gonna do dot button container. And we want to, again, make this a flex box or flex. We're gonna use flex, so display flex, and we want to justify content, which is going to make it go left and right, right? So you can justify the start and or center. We want to do center. So justify content center. Hit save. Again, you might have to refresh it, but let's check. Nope. Okay, so this automatically went to the center. And again, if you want to inspect it, you can inspect the button, or more specifically the button container, right? Because this is what we put our element on. And you can see the button container has display flex and justify content center, which is exactly what we want. And the next thing you'll notice that's different between this and our demo is the font is not the same. We want to get this specific font that kind of gives it this game-like fun quality. So to do that, you're going to go to fonts.google.com and you want to search for Gloria Hallelujah. So Gloria, you just type in Gloria here. Hit enter, or you can choose a font that appeals to you inside of Google. I just happen to pick Gloria Hallelujah. Click on it, and over here it's going to give you your selected family option, which is fine, Gloria Hallelujah. If it gives you other options up in here and you don't want those, you can individually remove those other options. So we just want Gloria Hallelujah selected. And down here you're going to see it gives you the rule, font family, and it shows you how to use it in your CSS file, and it gives you your links to use in your HTML. So let's copy the links, Control C, and we're going to go back to our code and we're going to paste our links, I believe above the style sheet, but if it doesn't work, we'll put it below. Just paste it in there and save it. Notice again, it just reformats for me because I'm using Prettier. You might need to reformat that yourself. So the links are in here for that Google font, but you're going to notice nothing's changed, and that's because we need to add the CSS, and we want this throughout the app. So let's go back to here, and we're going to go down to the rule, the CSS rule to specify, copy it, head on back over to the file, CSS, and at the top here we're going to say body because we want this everywhere, and paste it just like that, and hit save. And let's go back over, and you'll notice now Tic-Tac-Toe has this fancy font. Play again doesn't, and for now that's okay. We will come back to adding it to the button also if we'd like. And the next thing we're going to do is style this button. Now we're not going to hand style it from scratch. I've created a library of inputs, so we're going to make it relatable to buttons, but a library of input, different things that you can use to style your buttons quickly and easily. And I made this back when I was teaching myself to code, so why not use it, right? And this is kind of show you how you can use other people's CSS in your project. So what I've done is I created this site. If you go to this link right here and /formal site, you're going to see that the site pops up, right? And how it works, find an input design you enjoy, right? And so there's all these different kinds of buttons. You can style your button however you'd like. In this case, they're inputs, right? But for example, I use this one, and you can kind of click in and out and see what the buttons do, right? Different kind of buttons do different things, all kinds of options. So, choose your favorite and go ahead and click copy code on it. So copy code, and it shows you the class we're going to need to input here. But for now, let's do copy code. And we want to paste this code in our CSS file. So head on over to your CSS. And this is going to be at the very bottom, and I'm going to make a comment. So to make a comment, /*, and we're going to say button stylings. And then */ to finish the comment. And then we're going to Control V to paste. And you'll notice there's quite a bit here, and that's okay. This is the button stylings that I made previously to get that effect. So go ahead and click save. And it's not going to give us quite what we want, but it's going to be pretty close. And before we look, we want to put those classes, right? Because these are classes, but we don't have them attached to anything in HTML. So we need to go to our HTML and attach those classes to our button. And we find those in here, right? It tells you the classes to use. So just go ahead and copy these, Control C. Head back to your code, excuse me, and paste them in, Control V, hit save, and we go back to our file, refresh. Okay, and you're going to notice the button is now doing something slightly different. It's not working quite right? Like on hover, it's not giving that depth effect, and that's okay. I kind of have to click it, and it's not working quite right. So let's fix just a little bit of the CSS. A lot of coding professionally, right, is seeing someone else's code and knowing how to fix it, or figuring out how to fix it. So let's do a debugging process here, right? Because this was used for an input in this library that I made, but we want to use this for a button. We have most everything we need. We just need to change one or two things around. Okay, so back in our CSS, under the button stylings that we have copied over, we want to make a few changes. One of these are this focus, right? So focus is for like an input where you click into something. We actually want this to be hover, because we want to hover over the button. And same for this, we want to say hover. And then you notice the text is kind of jammed here against the left and right side. We want to add just a bit of padding to that. And to do that, we go up here to input padding, and notice there's only two options. The first one means top and bottom padding, and the second one means left and right padding. And you want to use the left and right padding one, and we're going to expand it to 20 pixels instead of 10, you know. And I just use experimentation for this, you know, use what looks good to you. So click save. So we changed hover to hover from focus, and we changed this 10 pixels to 20 pixels. Again, make sure you save. Go back and notice the button's expanded a little bit, and if we hover it, all right, it does what we want it to, right? Hover, unhover, hover, unhover. We get that cool little CSS effect. And I guess I can maybe just explain just a little bit more what's going on here, right? So border radius is giving us those rounded edges we see. Transition is giving us that ease effect. So instead of being like instant, it's giving us this slow kind of in and out effect, just over 0.3 seconds. Background color self-explanatory, border, yep. So box shadow, again, box shadow, increasing it on hover. You'll notice the box shadow is small here. When you hover, the box shadow, right, gets much bigger. So that's what box shadow does. So that's all the stylings we need. Now we're going to get into the JavaScript, and we will style some of our tic-tac-toe squares once we're in the JavaScript, but we want to get in and start coding those things out now. And just a second ago I said JavaScript, but don't worry, we are using TypeScript as promised, right? So what we want to do is Parcel handles TypeScript automatically. There's nothing special we need to do, no crazy configuration. So what we want to do is we're going to click New File, and we want an index.ts file for TypeScript instead of JS for JavaScript. So index.ts like this, hit enter. And we want to make sure that just this is working in general, right? So we're going to just say console.log. Oops, not like that. And I'm just gonna say I am here in all caps and hit save on it. And it's not going to work yet because we haven't linked it to our HTML, right? If you go in the browser and you try and inspect in the console, you won't see this, right? Because you need to link it. So over in the HTML, at the very bottom of the body underneath the div, we want to say script src for source, and we want to link this TypeScript file. Okay, these strings are acting really weird today. Yeah, see I'm getting like that. There we go. Okay, so index.ts like that. And just let it close its own script tag here and hit save. Now this is linked to, okay, and you're gonna see it's installing TypeScript and doing what it needs to do. So give it a minute to do that. All right, so yeah, see Parcel did that for you, and if you go to your package.json, now you're going to see it installed TypeScript for you within the application itself. You didn't have to do anything. The only reason we installed TypeScript globally earlier is so we could just do tsc init. I guess we could have installed it locally and then within the project, same thing. But either way, you have it globally now and you have it here. So it's built. Let's go to our tic-tac-toe and we're going to see if this console.log appears, right? So just refresh for good luck, and if we go to console, notice I'm in Edge here, Microsoft Edge. I usually use Chrome tools, but really doesn't matter. You're going to have a console option in both. And you're going to see I am here. So that's how you know the TypeScript is linked to the HTML file, and we're ready to continue coding. Now that we know our TypeScript's working, you can delete the console.log, and we're going to create a main function like this. And we're going to call the main function down here, just so we don't forget to call it and wonder why things are not working. And then what we want to do is we need to figure out how we're going to create a box, right, in the HTML. Because right now we have the container, just like this, the game container, but there's nothing in here, right? So we need to create a set of tic-tac-toe boxes and append them to this game container is the goal. So first off, the first step to making a set of them is to make one, right? So we want to have a function called make box like this. And that's really the goal of this, is to make box. You're going to see it's highlighted, right? We're using TypeScript and cannot find name make box. That's fine. Speaking of using TypeScript, let's go ahead and say :void, because this main function doesn't return anything. I'm going to be explicitly saying the types just to kind of make it obvious what's happening. TypeScript can infer the types if you'd like, but like I said, I'm going to explicitly type out most of my types today. Plus, it's a good learning exercise. So make box right now, it doesn't take in anything, and that's fine. So function make box like this returns void, because we're just making something and appending it to the document object module, or the DOM. So to do this, we want to create a div for our box, and our box is just going to be a div, not a button in this case. So const box, and again, I'm glancing over here because I have made this right first before I do this tutorial, just to confirm, like, I like to make projects, and then I like to be like, hey, this was fun, so I give it to you, right? So that's why I'm glancing back and forth, just if you're wondering what's happening here, right? So I do have the code, and I want to make sure I get it to you correctly and that you can have a cool product when it's finished, right? And I just basically like to share what I do. So box, and this is going to be an HTML div element, and you're going to notice it gives you options here, right? And this is what we want: HTML div element. Again, it could infer this, but we want to explicitly say that's what it is. Document equals document dot create element. And notice we're doing this no React or anything. You don't need React for this, right? It's just Tic-Tac-Toe div. So we're just creating a div right now. It's not appended to anything, but we've created a div and we stored it in this variable called box, and this is just the type of the box, right? This is our TypeScript. So then we're going to give it a class name, because we're going to need to style our box. So box dot class name equals, and we're just going to say box. We're going to give it an ID eventually, not yet. Box dot text content. For now, we're going to say it's equal to X. It will be equal to an empty space, but we want to see the text content inside our box or our div, right? And then we need to append it to this game container element, but we don't have the game container element in here yet, right? So we can't append it. What we need to do is select the game container from the HTML at the top of our JavaScript. You could do it elsewhere, but I'm going to do it up here. So I can say const, what did I call it over here? Okay, yeah, board makes more sense than game container. Const board, B-O-A-R-D, there we go, equals document dot query selector, and it is a class, I believe, so dot game container, like this, as, and this is where we need to tell TypeScript that it's an HTML element, like this. So as HTML element, just says, hey, this is an HTML element, and we're storing it inside of board. Now that we have that, we can go down here and we can append our box to the board that's already in the HTML. So we should be able to say board dot, I believe it's just append box, like this. And if we save it and we go over, you're probably not going to see anything because our div doesn't have any width and height, so we're going to need to style it. But let's check. Refresh. Yeah, you're going to notice it's probably here, but it's not visible, right? So if we inspect it, notice our div box is here. I can highlight it. Oh, there's our X, right? So it is visible, but it's really small. It's not centered. It's got some issues, right? So we want to style this box. So to do that, let's go to our style.css. Okay, we are back in our style.css, and what we want to do is style our box, right? So let's make a .box. So we're grabbing that box class and that we've created in the TypeScript, right? And we want to style it. So there's a couple things we want to do. We want to give it a width and height. Again, I have these kind of preset out that I experimented earlier, and I found 75 pixels works good for me. You can always change to whatever size of box you would like, but 75 pixels width and height. To get it centered, we do display flex, and we say justify content. This is, again, justify content is the left and right. We want it to be center. And then we do the same for align items. And align items is your top and down, right? So justify content, left and right, center. Align items, top and bottom. You want to center it between those, right? So we do that. And if we save it like this, let's just go over and see what we got so far. refresh. And it's not centered yet. No worries, we'll get there. What am I missing? Display flex, justify align, we'll get there. So let's go ahead and create a few more stylings, and then we'll make sure everything's linked up right. So font weight, and again, this is just stuff that worked for me. I just made it bold. Font size 40 pixels. Again, these are all just options, and we're going to give it a box shadow of 5 pixels, 5 pixels, 5 pixels, and black. Again, you can experiment with the different box shadow options. For me, this just gives a little bit of depth to the box. It's a bit cartoonish, but again, it's tic-tac-toe. So 5 pixels is okay with me. So save it. Let's go back over here. Okay, you're gonna notice our box now has that kind of shadow to it. The font's bigger, it's bold, it looks much better, but it's still not center, right? So we need to fix that. So the issue with centering is that we tried to display flex and center just this div itself, and that's not gonna work. We need to put the display flex and center options on the container that it's inside of, the game container. So let's go back to our HTML. You can see the game container, our div is inside of here, right? Because we've appended it to this, but we've done it dynamically, so it's not visible here. So let's go to our style.css, and instead of displaying flex, justifying and aligning items, we want to we want to put all these inside of the game container, I believe. Which, do we have that yet? We do not have that yet. So let's make one for .game container, and we're gonna put those there, save it, and let's see what we get. Okay, yeah, and now this is centered. Notice our text isn't centered, right? So now we have an issue of our text isn't centered, but our box is centered, and we can't really see our box. So let's just add a background color for now to our box, and we'll just aquamarine looks nice. So there we go. Save it. We will add that cool rainbow animation at the end, but right now we just want to see our box. Okay, so box is centered, but the X is not centered, right? So everything's a process. So inside of our box, we should be able to say text align center. If we can't do that, then we're gonna say, then we'll go into displaying this flex also, but we should be able to do text align center. Save it. Let's see what we get. Cool. So now we have our box that's centered because we put the display flex on the container that houses this box, or that houses this div. And then inside of the div itself, we can text align center our X, right? So now we have this. Now we need to make 9 of these, right? Because one doesn't make a very interesting tic-tac-toe game. So let's make 9 of these. In our TypeScript file, right, we've made 1 box. Now we need to make 8 more of these boxes, and we're going to want to give them each their own box ID, because as we click them, we want to know, we want to know what the text content is inside of the box, specific box that we clicked. So we have a general box class, but each box also wants to have, we want to create an ID for it. So instead of just make box up here, we want to change this to a create board function, and this is going to make all of our boxes for us. So create board. It's not going to take in anything, but we're going to say function create board like this, and just takes in nothing, returns void. Now our make box will take in something, and I'll show you why in just a second. Again, just want to make sure I'm doing this right with you. So our make box, first off, create board. How are we going to do this, right? We need to create box. We need to call this make box function 9 times. We could say make box. Yeah, we could say make box and do that 9 times like that, but we're going to use a for loop because that's what they're for, right? So for, no pun intended, for let I equals 0, when I is less than or equal to 9, I plus plus, or I plus equals 1, however you want to say it. And we're going to call the make box function because we want to do this 9 times, make box, and what we're going to actually do is pass in the index or the count number. So the first time it's going to pass in 0, and then 1, and then 2, and that's how we're going to get our dynamically generated box ID. So if we pass in I here, you're going to notice this yells at you, or yells at me, because it says expected 0 arguments got 1. That's okay, we need to add it in here. So we're going to pass in this case, an index. I'm just going to call it I. And I is a number, so in TypeScript we have the number type like this. And now we're going to be able to add our box ID. So we gave the box a class name. Underneath we can say box.id equals, and we're going to use template literal here. So you're going to want to use the backticks, which are up in the top left of your keyboard underneath the escape key. Most likely it's the tilde symbol, but just push the button and it'll give you backticks. To get the tilde, you do shift and the backtick button. So we use this and we say box like that, hyphen, and then this is our ID is going to be the ID that's coming in, this number. So in this case, box hyphen $, this allows you to use this I, right? So box hyphen I, so it'll be box hyphen 0, box hyphen 1, box hyphen 2, etc. like that. So now we're good to go there. We're making each individual box, we're giving it an ID, and then we're appending each box to the board, and we're doing that 9 times, right? We're calling this function 9 times. So we save it. Okay, and it looks good, it built. So let's go over here and you're gonna see, awesome, it has created 9 boxes just like we've asked it to, right? But it doesn't look like a tic-tac-toe board, so we need to go into our CSS and style this to look like a tic-tac-toe board. So if you haven't already, head over to your CSS, your style sheet, and we want to style this game container so we don't have all those X's in a row, right? We want 3 columns of 3 X's each. So to do that, we actually don't need this anymore, but we'll comment it out for now and I'll show you why we don't need it. We're gonna use grid, and display grid works for most newer browsers. You need to check the compatibility on this to see. If you're trying to do this for a really old browser, this probably won't work, and you'll probably need flex or like floats or something. But display grid should work for most people, so we're going to use that. Display grid, grid template columns. So this tells us how many columns we want, and we want 3 of them. And I've already experimented. 75 pixels each is the best for our purposes. For the purposes we're using. You could use auto, but then you have to do some other adjustments. This worked best for me. So if we save this and we go look, we're gonna see now we have our grid. We actually have 10 boxes, we only want 9. So let's fix that first, right? So fix one issue at a time. You're gonna notice here in the TypeScript, I did the for loop one too many times. So we can just say when I is less than 9. Or less than or equal to 8, depending on how you want to put it. Because I had less than or equal to 9, it runs 10 times. So we just want less than 9. Save that, we go back. Okay, now we have 9. There's no gaps between them though, right? We want a little bit of gap between each, so let's add the gap. Style sheet. And to do that, it used to be called grid gap, but now it's just called gap. And we're gonna say 20 pixels. So it's going to be this 20 pixels gap, up, down, left, right. You'll see in a second. So gap, save. And now our board's looking better. And now we need to get this board to the center. And with grid, instead of needing to say flex again, we still will use justify content, but it's just now done with grid. So we can down here say justify content center like that. And now we don't need our flex anymore. Save it. Confirm it looks good. All right, this looks really good. The only issue, a couple issues I'm seeing. One is there's not enough space between this button and the board, but we'll fix that later. But what's really bothering me is it doesn't look like a board that you can click on, right? When you hover, it doesn't give you that mouse pointer effect. We have a mouse pointer, but not like the hand pointer effect. So let's give this a pointer. So to do that, we can say cursor, pointer, just like that. And we want to do that for our button too. So let's see. Yeah, so we have all this input and stuff. We can just say dot button because we have the button class on it too. And we can say cursor, pointer, like that. Save it. So now for our button and for our boxes, we should have that pointer. Let's see. Yeah, so now it's like obvious that when we're in a box and we can select it, right? So we have the pointer. And we'll get to, nothing works, right? So when we click it, nothing does anything yet, but now we're gonna add that game logic in. Now that we have it set up, let's start adding logic. Last thing before the game logic, actually, we wanna hide this button before, right? Because if we're just starting the game, we don't wanna have the option to play again. We only wanna play again when the game ends. So visibility on the button class of hidden. Save that, make sure it hides. Okay, yeah, so now we have the game set up and we want to add the logic. Okay, so the game logic. We need to add an event listener. We could add it to every button, but that's kind of costly. So we're going to add an event listener to the board as a whole. So down here, I'm going to, or up here actually, above main, I'm going to create a function and call it listen board. So we're listening to the game board, and this function doesn't return anything, so void. And we're going to say board, because we've selected the board up here, up top here, right? So we already have it, board dot add event listener, and we're going to listen for a click. And when the board, anywhere in the board's clicked, we want to run the game. So we want to call the function run game. Now usually to call a function called run game, right, you use these parentheses, but it knows that you want to call this function. Is what this actually is, it's like a callback function, and you could put your logic in here, but we don't want to do that. We just want to say run game and make a separate function. So you could make a callback function and put everything inside of there, the run game stuff, but we're going to create run game separately from this. Okay, so we need a run game function now. So we have our event listener on click. We want to do run game function run game, like this, and it doesn't, it will take in something in a second. Actually, it needs to take it in now. It takes in an event. So it takes, I'm just going to call it E for event, and it takes in an event, and it's not going to return anything. It's just a listener, or it's just listening, so void. And we want to just make sure it works, so we'll console.log button clicked, or actually technically it's board clicked, right? So run game takes in an event, and we're just going to say, hey, the board was clicked. And if we want to see, we could actually log the event too. So not like that though. E, there we go, E board clicked. So it should tell us the event and the board click. So save. Let's go to our board and hit our console, and we click on the board. Again, we get nothing. We might need to refresh. Still nothing. Okay, debugging. Right, so debugging is always a part of coding, and the question is, why didn't this listener work? And the answer is we need to add it to our main function, because we have this function called listen board, but we never call that function anywhere. And we're running our main function, which runs everything. So we want to create the board. We want to create the board, and then we want to listen to the board. So listen board. If we save it now, go over, and we click. Refresh. Okay, that's interesting. We still get nothing. We're getting closer. So after a minute of debugging, I realized that up here we're still using this as a callback function. We don't want that. We just want to have the run game function here, so that when we click anywhere on the board, we call the run game function, which will log board clicked. So if we save this now, go back, click. Yeah, there we go, board clicked. As you can see, board is clicking now, right? So whenever we click, we get this board click 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Can I zoom in on the console? I can. Yep, so you can see that a little better. Perfect. Refresh. Head back to the code. And now what we want to do is we want to increase this run game function, right? So we don't want to just log board clicked. We need to have some game functionality in here, right? So we need to know what we clicked. So I'm going to say const box ID, and this box ID, we're trying to establish what we clicked on. Excuse me. And this could be a string or null, depending on what we click. And it's going to be a string because it comes in as a string. So we're going to say string. And in TypeScript, we can use this pipe operator here, string pipe null, like this. Notice, like, it's not or like in JavaScript or TypeScript, it's just the pipe symbol for this type. So it's string or null. And I'll show you why we need this, I guess, because if we just say string and we say, this is a special way to kind of get this and to make it work. But HTML element, so we do this, e.target, and it took a little bit of experimenting here, but if you just log e, you're going to see that the event has a target. So you're going to want that target, and then that target has an ID. So you're going to want that ID. So if you just log the event, you can kind of go through this process on your own and see how I came to get this mess of text. But we need the target of the event, and we need the ID on that target, which is a little bit confusing, but yeah, you write it like this, .id. So HTML element e.target box.id like this. Box ID has not been read yet. That's fine. I'm just gonna leave this as not null for now, so you can see kind of how this pops up, because it may not have an ID. But if I try and use this ID down below here, if I say const box, because now we want to we want to actually select the box from the DOM, from the document object module. We want to select the box from there with this ID that we pulled out on click. So we get the ID of the box we clicked on, and then we want to get the actual box so that we can change the insides of that box, which is a bit confusing, but that's okay. It'll make sense in a minute. So box, it's an HTML element that we're getting, or this is also or null. I'm just going to add in the or null up top now, because basically this is going to turn red because it's saying, hey, you didn't check to see if your box ID is null. So we want to say if ID double equals null, or triple equals null, box ID, I guess. If box ID triple equals null, then a couple options. You could throw a new error. In my case, I'm just going to return, because I don't want it to do anything if the box ID is null. I don't want it to continue to run the game logic, so I just want the function to return and nothing to happen. So if box ID triple equals null, return. And then box here, HTML element or null. And we want to get the ID that we have gotten from up here. So this ID, if we log that, I guess I can show you before we do it. So if we say console.log box ID like this, and actually if we do this, TypeScript doesn't yell, but it should. So if we log the box ID like this, we will get the ID of the box that we clicked on. And to show you that, click box 1, right? Now why isn't this box 2, right? Because this would be box 1. This is box 0. Our list starts with 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if you were missing before, you can see it over here. 8 didn't show up. That's interesting. Now it did. And that may be a bug that we need to fix then. Maybe I just clicked on the wrong thing. I'm thinking that's the case. So if you click in the middle, you're not going to get anything. But if you click on the side here, you're going to get the box ID, in this case box 2. All right, and we need to use those box IDs. So let's go back to the code. Just kind of wanted to show you what that was, right? Instead of just typing it out and being like, how does this work, right? It's always good to show. So here we go. Let's uncomment this out now, because we want to select the box based on the ID here. So const box, and we say it's going to be an HTML element or null equals document.query selector. And we want to get the ID. So it's going to be the hash symbol there, the pound symbol, and then the ID like this. And we're going to need to use the backticks again, string interpolation. Okay, and you're going to see ID comes up because it's not called ID. I called it that in the code I wrote, but I think it's more appropriately named box ID here. So again, our box ID you saw was like box 1, box 2, box 3. Those are the IDs we added down here in the make box function. That's where that's coming from, right? So that's where that box ID is coming from. And then once we have that, we need to check if a couple things. So let's save it first. Once we have that box, we need to see if the box is empty, right? If the box is empty, then we want to, how do we say about this? If the box is not empty, then we want to add X or O to it, right? Depending on whose turn it is. If the box is empty, or they just clicked on null and they didn't actually get a box ID, then we want to return, just return, because we don't want the process to go any further. So to do that, we're going to say if box is null, right? If they clicked on something that wasn't a box, or the text content of the box is not an empty string. So if the box is null, or the box already contains X or O, then we just want to return. If the box, and in our case, all the boxes have something in them, right? They have X currently, but we want to get rid of that. So now all our boxes don't have anything. And if we click on a box, it's going to hit this box text content as empty, and it's just going to return, and that's fine. So let's go back. Now our boxes are empty, and if we click them, Okay, we log the box ID still because that's before the return, but it just returns, it won't do anything from there. So this box ID is getting logged. And that's fine for now, we'll leave that there. But let's continue on with the logic. Okay, so now we're getting into the, the box is either going to be X, O, or 0, or empty, X, O, or empty, and it's always going to be one of those three things. So we're going to create a type up here to handle that scenario. So we can say type turn equals X, pipe, a pipe symbol, O, yeah, there we go, or an empty string. It's always going to be one of those three things, right? It's always going to be X, O, or an empty string. And the turn is going to start out being X. So we can say let turn equal, and you're going to notice here that it doesn't give any options, but if I say turn of type turn, and our type we created here, it's called a union type. So turn can only be one of these three things. If we try and make turn something else, this is going to turn red, and it's going to be like, hey, it has to be one of these three things. So we can say, okay, and it gives options here, right? It can be an empty string, or O, or X. In this case, we want to start off with X. And it can only be those three things. If we try and type P in here, it's going to yell at us, and it's going to say, hey, type P is not assignable to turn, because turn has to be one of these three things. In our case, X. And if you weren't using TypeScript, or if you just wanted to use an enum or something of that nature, if you wanted to create your own kind of, if you want to do this another way is what I'm saying, you could say const turn like this and equals, and you could say X, X, O, O, and then something like empty, empty space, and you get the same effect, because then down here you could say turn dot, and it's going to give you one of those three options, right? Those are the only three available options on turn. So this is just another way to do it, but since we're using TypeScript, we're going to use this union type, and the turn is currently equal to X when we start, and then every time we click a box, the turn will turn to O, and then the next time we click, it'll turn back to X, etc. until the game's over. So back in our run game function, right, we were at if the box is null, or so if they didn't click on a box, or the box is not empty, which means it holds X or O, we just want to return. If the box is empty, right, the opposite would be if the box is empty and we've clicked on a box, then we want to return the player whose turn it is. In this case, the turn starts out as X. So we can say box.text content. So we're filling the box with the value of the current turn, which we've established here is X. So let's go over to our board and see that in action, right? So every time we click a box now, it should fill in with X, right? And the game, of course, won't last long if we do that, right? We continue to click, it just keeps filling in with X. So we need to switch the turn, right? For every click, we need to switch the player from X to O and back and forth. So let's add that switch functionality. So we can say underneath here, we'll say switch player like this, and then we want to add a switch player function. So function switch player. It doesn't take anything, and it doesn't return anything. We're just switching the player above. Actually, it does take in. It takes in the current turn. So it takes in the current turn as a turn, right? The type is turn, and it doesn't return anything, but it does switch the turn. So if turn triple equals X, right? It only gives you those options. Then we want to say turn equals O. Else, and it's okay, some people don't like using else, but I'm using it here. Else turn equals X, and it's totally fine to do that. Like, there's nothing wrong with this. So if turn is X, then the turn should be O, else the turn should be X. That's our switch player function. Save it. Okay, and you're going to notice it errors here, expects an argument, right? Because we gave it an argument, which is cool that it errors instead of just silently erroring and we have no idea what it's doing. We need to pass it the current turn. So once we've filled the box with X or O, then we want to switch players. So save this. Let's go back to our code. or our browser, sorry, words, and now it still returns X for everyone, right? Why is it doing that? Debugging time. Okay, so the answer to this is why is it not switching is because we don't actually need to pass in turn here. So if we don't pass in turn, then it's getting the turn from up here instead of the turn that's coming in through here. A little bit confusing, but basically we don't want to pass in the turn here. We want to always get the turn from up here. And so it will switch back and forth. So save it, head over here, XO, 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 right? So now we can fill up the board with different X's and O's, and if we click on something that's already filled, notice it doesn't change it, doesn't do anything that's not supposed to, right? So if I click, but then an issue would be like, right, so I clicked X, now if I click again, should be O's turn, and if I click here, okay, now it's O's turn, which is correct, right? Because we don't want to switch turns just because we click the wrong thing, right? So X, I can click as many times as I want, it's fine, then O appears, which it should. And the reason it's doing that, and it's doing it correctly, is because we're calling switch player after these null checks. So if the box has a text content that's already filled, then it just returns and it never switches the player, which is good, and it's what we want, because we don't want it to switch the player if the box has text and we click on it by mistake, right? So that's what these return checks are. Now that we're filling up our boxes, we need a way to check for a winner each turn, right? So if there's a winner, we don't want to switch the player. We want to go into this endgame kind of functionality. So after we say, after we put the text in the box, then we want to check for a winner. So we can say const, not in all caps, const winner, and this is going to be a function. This is currently a variable, right? But on the right hand side will be a function that returns a Boolean value. So winner will be Boolean. It's either going to be true or false, and we're going to run the function called check winner to see if there is a winner. Check winner will return a Boolean of true or false, and based on that true or false winner, we're going to say if there is no winner, then we want to switch the player, right? So if there's no winner, switch players, continue the game. Else, we want to go into the end game, and for now we're just going to say console.log, there is a winner, like this. Now we need our check winner function, so let's go down here and make ourselves a check winner function. Just want to make sure this is correct. So function check winner. And it doesn't take in anything, but it returns a Boolean value, right? And that's what we're storing inside of winner. And so we're going to say return. And this is actually, there's a couple ways to do this, right? So we won't do return first. There's a couple ways to do this. You can make smaller functions that check for individual rows, and you can make it so that it's very compact. You can make this check so it's very compact and it's a few lines, but then you gotta kind of look through to see what everything's doing. Or you can do what I did and do a brute force check, which isn't the best. I could take the time to make this much more compact, but again, it's not that big and it's just very clear what's happening this way. So I'm gonna type this out and then I will copy paste the brute force way that I've done it in, and I'll show you. So we're gonna, first off, we need to get the boxes to check a winner, right? So we have all these boxes on our board, and then we need to check the values inside the boxes to see if there is a winner. So we need to get all the boxes from the game board first, actually, before we do the brute force check. So we'll say const boxes, and this is going to be return an array, or this is going to store, excuse me, an array of string, and we're going to call a function called get boxes, which we also haven't made, right? So we're building up these functions. So we want to get all the boxes, and then we want to check for a winner. And when I say get the boxes, we're actually getting the box content. So this is the content of the boxes. It's either going to be empty, X, or O. So when I say excuse me, when I say we're getting the boxes, we're getting the content of the boxes. So you could rename this if you want, get box content. For now, I'm going to leave it called get boxes. So function get boxes, and we want to get the content from each box and store it as an array of string. inside of this boxes variable. So function get boxes doesn't take in anything, but again it returns this array of string. In TypeScript you can also say string like this, I believe. So it's an array of string, or the array might go in front. Not sure, I like using this notation. But feel free to check that out. There is another way to write array of string. So an array of string, it's going to return. And so we need to, and this is red right now because it's not actually returning anything yet inside of it. But we need to get all of the boxes, and we're going to store them inside of an array, and then we'll return that array. So what I mean is const, we're going to do this, boxes inside of here also, an array of string, and we're going to start it as it's equal to nothing, and we're going to get the content of each box, and we're going to push the content into this empty array. So this would be more like boxes content. We'll call it that. I think that makes more sense. And so we need a for loop next. So for let I equal, I could use 0 here. I'm going to use 1 when I is less than or equal to 9, just to show you another way to do it. I plus plus. And then what I need to do is I need to get the box from the DOM, and then I need to get the box content and push it to this box's content empty array, so that we have 9 different strings for all the boxes, 9 different contents inside of this empty array. So we have this for loop, and we say const box equals documents dot query selector again, and we're getting the box by its ID. So box, just looking here to make sure I get it right. Yeah, I. So the index is the ID, and we want to use 1 here. We could use 0 and say I plus 1, but we want to use 1 here because our box IDs are 1 through 9, and it just makes it easier to do it this particular way as HTML element. But like I say, you could say I plus, you could make this 0 to 8, or I is less than 9 instead of less than or equal to, and then say box hyphen I plus 1. So we get the HTML element as the box, and then we want to get the content inside the box. So const box content, it's going to be string, or if there's nothing in there, it could be null. Probably not possible, but TypeScript will be mad if we don't add the null check, which is good because we don't want any unseen errors. So we get the box text content and we store it inside of our variable box content. And then we need to check if it's null, right? So if box content triple equals null, we're just going to push an empty string, which is fine because it's not an X or an O, and we're really worried about the X or O. It's not called boxes, it's called boxes content. Here we go. So if the content of the box we get from the DOM of each box is null, then we want to push an empty string to the box's content array. If it's not null, so else, then we want to push the actual content that's in there. So box content, box's content, dot push the box content. So we're pushing this box content into this box's content array. And then at the bottom, we're going to return the box's content array of string, which is why we specified this up here. Okay, so up here, we just forgot to add our equals. And you're gonna see now this isn't erroring, it's just saying, hey, we haven't used this yet. So we get all of our we get all of our content, like XO empty string for each one of these. So it takes whatever the value is inside of each of these. It returns it into this. I'm going to say it's boxes content, just so it's more clear of what this is. And then we can check for the winner based on this boxes content. And this is actually pretty big, so I'm just going to name it boxes again. You'll see why in a second. Now this is where I do the check to see if there's a winner, right? And again, like I say, you can make this really compact if you want, but there's not that many combinations, right? So you check each row, and then you check each column, and then you check the two diagonals to see if there's a winner. So I'm going to copy and paste this over because it's a bit of typing, and then I will explain to you what this does. And this is the only time copy pasting, just a bit here that I don't want to waste typing on, to be honest. Yeah, so we're returning a Boolean value, and we're checking all these things, and I'll show you what they mean, right? So this is the first row. Boxes 0 would be that top left corner. Boxes 1 would be the middle. So if the top left, which is boxes 0, let's say it's x, equals the one that's to the right of it, and the one and that middle one, right? So the top left equals the middle, and the middle equals the right, which in this case is, how did I say it here? So I said boxes 0 equals boxes 1. The top left equals the middle, and the middle equals the right, right? Okay, that is what I said, yeah. So if the top equals the middle and the middle equals the right, then we know that they're all the same, which could be a winner. But if they're all empty, right, that's going to be a false positive. That's not going to be good. So if these are all, if all three are equal and they're not empty, then we have a winner. If they're all equal but they're all an empty string, there's no winner, which would throw a false positive, and that is what this additional thing is for. So if the top three across are equal and they're not empty, which means they're all X or O, then we have a winner. And then we can do that, and we can say or, and we check the other one. So we check the second row, third row, and then we check the columns. So column 1, column 2, column 3, and then we check each diagonal. And that's what this is. And of course you can, this would be a good exercise for you, is probably to take this code and make it more compact, maybe make smaller functions and do the check based on that. But like I say, I brute forced it because there's not a lot here, right? If there was like 100 things, I would absolutely make smaller functions for it. So this is how we create our check winner. And now that we have that, the whole point of all that was, right? So we change the box, so from X to O. We set the box content equal to X or O. If there is then we check for a winner. If there is a winner, if there's not a winner, we switch players. If there is a winner, we console.log there is a winner. So let's go to that and let's give it a try. And there probably going to be a bug here and we need to fix, but let's see. X. Okay, cannot read properties of null at get boxes. It's fine. For now, we'll leave that. We'll check in a second. Okay, so we're getting all X's here. So there is a bug. So let's go back and do a quick debug. Okay, so I've done some troubleshooting and I've kind of figured out what's going on. So before we had had an off by 1 in our for loop. So our boxes were actually, our box IDs were 0 to 8, and I thought they were 1 to 9, so I had 1 to 9 going on in this loop on line 46. We need to make this 0 to 8. That way our box IDs actually are box IDs 0 through 8. And then we need to add this hash symbol here. Because if we're using query selector, we need this out in front. If you're using get element by ID, you don't need that, but since we're using query selector, we do need that. So once you've done both of those and you save it and you head back into your code, now you're going to see the X's and O's alternate like they should. And let's get the console up here. And if I'm logging a lot of stuff, but if we get 3 in a row, you're going to see a message here that there is a winner, right? And that's that console.log message that we put down in the text earlier, which is right here. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove my console.logs, not that there is a winner, but my debugging console.logs that I had. So I always find that there are debuggers for VS Code, but I find just console.logging usually does the trick for me. So just something to keep in mind if you're doing debugging. Okay, and the next step is if there is a winner, instead of logging there's a winner, we want to run the endgame functionality, right? Because someone has won our game. And you see it's in red because we haven't made the function for it yet, but we can right now. Function end game. Doesn't take anything and returns void, which is okay. And then inside of our end game, so once the game ends, we don't want the board itself to be clickable anymore. I mean, you could, it wouldn't do anything because everything's filled in, it would just return, but we don't want it to be clickable for correctness sake. So we can say board.remove event listener, like that, and we want to remove the click from run game, like that. Run game. There we go. So remove the click from run game. And then we want to, right, this is where we display our win message, and we want our button to appear and pop up. So to do that, we want to add an event listener to our button. We didn't add it before because it's hidden, but I'm pretty sure you could still click on that and the event would fire if you accidentally clicked on it. We don't want that. We want the event to only fire if the game is over. So now we add that. So we say button. Did we import the button? We did not. So we need to get the button. Const button equals document dot query selector. Now it has a class of button, so dot button as HTML element, like that. Okay. Now we can use this button down here and add an event listener on it. So button dot add event listener, and again we're listening for a click. And when it's clicked, we want to reset the game because it's the play again button, right? So on click, we want to reset the game. So we remove the board listener, we add the button end listener. So now we need to set the win message. So we added an event listener, but it doesn't do anything yet. And for now, reset game, we could just make the function so it doesn't throw an error at us. Function reset game returns void. We're just gonna say game console.log game reset. And we'll deal with that function in a little bit. But for now, we want to continue on by filling in the winning text message, right? Because that doesn't exist yet. When you win a game, it just does this, right? When you win a game, it just does this, and you can't tell you won. You want this winning message to appear and the play again button option, which is what we're working on right now. So to do that, we need to get the excuse me. First off, we need to, let's see. Yeah, so we need to get the win message from the HTML, and that is here. Class is winner. So let's go back to our TypeScript, and we can say win message. We don't want to do it here. We want to do this up top. We're going to get the element like we did the other two. Const win message equals document dot query selector, and we want to get the, what's it called, winner dot winner as HTML element, like that. Now we can use this down in here to change the text, right? So let's see, we're in our end game, and I keep losing it. There we go. So if there is no win message, we kind of have to check because there may not be a win message if it doesn't select it properly. So we need to check for null first. So we're going to say if win message triple equals null, we're just going to return for now, and that's totally okay. No problem there. It just probably will come up blank. And then we can throw an error handling there later, but just for now. So then win message, we want to change the text content. So win message dot text content equals, and we want it to equal the turn. We don't have to pass it in because it's global up here. The turn is whatever turn it is after we switch player, or before we switch player, right? So if there is a winner, we don't switch player, we just end the game. So the last person to click probably made the 3 in a row, right? So we want the text content to equal the winning turn, right? So win message dot text content equals turn, and it's not displayed, right? It's hidden. So then we need to say win message dot set attribute, and we want to set the display attribute. I think it's set to none actually right now, or we haven't set it yet, but we need to. We need to set it to block like this. So we want to set the display attribute from none to block, and we might need to set it to none in just a minute, like I'm saying, but just for the example. And then we want to set the button visible, right? And the button, so the text goes from none to block, the button goes from hidden to visible. It's a little odd, but this is how it works. So button dot style dot visibility equals visible, like that. And we're gonna save that, and I don't think we have anything for the win message in our CSS yet, so let's see. No, we definitely don't, right? And we want that win message to be hidden at first. So let's go to our CSS and let's make a .winner here. And we want the display initially to, and I was wrong, it's gonna be hidden, display hidden. And that's totally okay. So display hidden, and the button, I think we already had the visibility hidden at first, right? Cool. So both are hidden, and then when we hit the end game, when the game is over, we set the text content, we make the win message visible and the button visible. Now the button won't do anything yet because we haven't added its own details to it, but we'll soon. So let's save it and head over to the browser and let's give it a try. XO. Okay, and we see X here, but that's not quite what we want, right? We want it to say winner is X. So let's change that message. Where is that? End game. Win message dot text content equals, and we'll say winner is, and we want to use again interpolated string, so the backticks winner is $turn, and let's add an exclamation point. It's a game. Let's add 3. Make it really exciting. So here we go. Save it. Go back to the game. Let's have O in this time. There we go. Winner is O. And play again, right? And it gives us that nice hover effect. And when we click it, it doesn't work, right? But we do get this game reset because we have added at least our initial event listener to the button. But we haven't done anything besides log something. So this all works, which is great. And then we just need to be able to reset the game. And then we want to add those color animations that we saw when we started the video. So let's do that. Okay, and now we need to be able to reset the game. So let's head back to our code and change out that console.log for some actual information here. So let's get rid of this. When we reset the game, it always starts with player 1, and player 1's always X. So we're just going to reset the turn to be equal to a turn, right? We're going to use that type again, and it's going to be, I guess we need to say const. We don't need to say const. We're just going to say turn equals X, like that. And you can already see it only gives those 3 options. We don't have to reset it to turn because up here we said the turn can only be equal to this type turn values. So my mistake. There we go. Turn equals X. And then we want to reset our boxes. We're going to need a function for this. So the idea is, right, all these boxes have stuff in them. We need to clear them all out. And to clear them all out, we want to make a reset boxes function like this. So let's do that. Function reset boxes. Don't think it takes anything. Returns void because it's just a DOM manipulation. And to do this, we're going to use another for loop. We're going to try to get the for loop right this time. So I think we're going to start with 0. So we're going to say for let I equal 0 when I is less than or equal to 8. I plus plus, and if that's off by 1, we can come back and change that, no problem. And then we need to get each box from the document object module, right? So we need to go through and get each of the 9 boxes, right? So this will be, we're going to do this, we're going to clear 1 box at a time. We get the first box, we do the clearing, we get the second box, we do the clearing, etc. So const box equals document. You've seen this a while now, so you're probably getting the hang of it. Query selector. Backticks, we're going to use the hash symbol for the ID. Don't forget it. We forgot it last time. My fault. And then we do I. So we get that box from the box ID, and we say it's as an HTML element. And then underneath, we want to set the text content to empty. So box.textContent equals an empty string like that. And we could actually say, I don't know if it's going to let us do this, but turn here. No, it's not going to let us do that. Okay, so just box.textContent equals empty string. Still kind of learning TypeScript, so just trying some different stuff out, and you'll see sometimes it doesn't work, right? But still a lot of fun. So, and then we want to, there's going to be a point here where we have an animation, and we're going to need to reset that. So for right now, I'm just going to put resetting animation and leave that to do, because we don't have the animation effect, but we're going to do that in just a little bit. So we have reset the box content, which is great. So now we're back up in reset game. We did reset boxes. Now we need to hide the button, right? Because we're starting over. So we click the button to play again. Then that button should be hidden. So button.style.visibility equals hidden. And then we also want to hide the win message, right? And we want to change it actually back to an empty string because it's no longer valid. We're starting the game over. So win message.text content equals empty, like that. And yeah, that'll work. If we just empty it, we probably don't have to make it hidden again because it's just not physically there. It's not visible. So that should actually work. Kind of a shortcut. And then we want to re-add the event listener to the board so that they can play the game again. Because remember, we removed it when the game was over. We need to add it back in. So board.add event listener. Just again listening for a click, and we're going to run the game. Call the run game function when we click somewhere on the board, which is the initial function that we started with back when we listened to the board. Okay, so that should do for resetting the game. So let's give it a save, go over, see if there's any bugs, anything we need to fix, and if not, then we'll go and add the animation. So save it. Let's go check out the game. XO, XO, X. Okay, X1. Play again. Okay, it clears the board. Everything disappears. Try again. O, X. Oh, XO, right? Starts with X. X. O, X, O. Okay, winner is O. Play again. Okay, and you can see the board clears every single time, right? So it looks like it's working fine. I think we're good to go. Just confirming that O appears correctly. I didn't really check yet. Winner is O. Okay, so everything's working correctly. Now we just need to add those fancy box animations that we saw at the beginning, and we've made our game. So let's go finish the styling. Okay, and the first thing we want to do is get our boxes doing that nice color transition effect. So to do that, we want to go to our CSS. And again, a lot of this took me a little bit to figure out, so I'm going to kind of look over here and make sure I'm getting it right for you. So we're in our box class, and instead of this background color, I'm going to comment it out for now, and if we don't need it later, we can delete it. So I'm going to hit enter, and we're going to add an animation to this box. So we're going to say animation. Whoa, not all that though. Animation, like that. And we're going to call it just my move. There's no need to call it anything fancy. We only have one here. It's going to take place over 15 seconds because it's going to go through all the colors of the rainbow. It's going to be infinite. So it's going to happen over and over and over again, and it's going to alternate. So it's going to go back and forth and over a 15-second period of time. So this is what we want here. I spelled animation wrong. Of course I did. Animation. There we go. So now this animation property exists. Animation did not. So we have this line in our box. Now we need to go down underneath it and create keyframes for that animation. Again, just going to look over here to make sure I get this right for you. So at keyframes, this is actually my first kind of animation browser experience, but I really wanted it to be something really bright and colorful. So that's why I did it this way and chose to kind of dive into this. So my move, and that's again the move we just mentioned right here, the animation. And inside of here, we're going to add percentages and colors we want it to be at that percentage. And it's out of 100, and it goes over 15 seconds. And what I did was I tried to space these percentages out about evenly so that it's transitioning between these colors approximately, you know, once every, it's not 2 seconds, maybe 1.5 seconds. It's transitioning between these colors. So here we go. A little tedious, but let's do it at 0%. So at the beginning, we want the background color to be red. Okay, and then we're just going to do this multiple times until we get to 100 over the rainbow colors. You can play around with the percentages to get what you'd like as far as creativity goes. But these are the percentages I use. So 14% background color, orange. Okay, we're just doing Roy G. Biv here. Next, 28% background color, yellow. And what we want to do here, we can copy paste and change the percentages and color names. It's going to go a little faster. We need 7, so one more. Not that. Copy, paste. Okay, so we got 28%. Then math, right? We got to do math. 42%. Background color Roy G, green. I think the next one's 60. Yep, 66%. Biv blue. And I actually chose to not use blue here because it's very in your face. I chose to use an RGB, so I'm gonna switch this over to RGB 0, 0, and it is, let me confirm, 162. So it's gonna be like a darker blue, and that's okay. I just didn't want it to be like as prominent as like hyperlink blue. So next is 82%. Okay, and indigo. And the last one will be violet, and that's at 100%. Once we've hit the top, it goes to violet. So yeah, yellow. Here we go, violet. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is our keyframes for our 15-second animation that infinitely loops and alternates back and forth. We save this, and hopefully we go over here and we have, all right, and we have an animation now, right? So you're going to see it kind of loop through this process. I'll let it play for a minute just to confirm. Yeah, that blue is a little dark, but it works. Turns to indigo, and then there we go. And then there's violet. And then it goes backwards, right? So now it goes to indigo, then blue. So that's what it does, right? It goes through the rainbow colors, and then it hits the end, and then it goes from the end back the whole way up to the beginning. We're at orange, so next should be red. Then it goes back to orange and goes back down, right? So it does this back and forth thing. Really cool animation actually for such a small amount of code. Now the last thing we want to do is when we click on these boxes for X and O, X's we're going to make them like a magenta color, and O's we're going to make them a yellow color when we click on them. So the other ones will still have the rainbow effect, but when we click on a box, it will stop the rainbow effect and it will choose that particular color for that particular symbol, X or O. So let's go code that. Okay, so let's go back to our CSS code so we can add those on-click styles. And what we want to do is we have a box class, but we want to add two other classes, an X class and an O class for when we click on a box and we want it to turn to that specific thing. We'll add or remove a class. So to do that, we need most of the box code. We're actually just going to copy the whole thing. Now there's probably smarter ways to do this with variables and stuff, but in CSS. But for now, we're just going to copy it because it's very short. It's only 3 things. So we can say .x, paste, and we're going to paste .y in a second. But not like that, right? We don't want the outer box here. Whoops. We just want these insides. And then let's do a .y, paste. Okay, and then we want to get rid of the animation for these two because we want them to be a specific color, about to sneeze. Excuse me. And then we want to uncomment the background colors because we want them to be a specific background color when clicked. In our case, we're going to use, let's see, what did I use before? Used magenta for X, so magenta. And then it didn't call it Y, right? This is O, the O class, because it's for O's when we put an O in. So yellow, not Y. So magenta for X, yellow for Y. Everything else is copied from here. Again, there are shorter ways to do this, but there's only 3, so we're not really worried about that. So save that. And now it's still not going to do anything, right? Because we haven't applied these classes. So we need to go to our TypeScript and figure out where these classes will be applied. So we're looking in run game, and right, so after a box is clicked, which is definitely going to be in run game, so let's find it. And then box, after we turn the text content to either X or O, then we also want to change the box color to that particular box's class, so either magenta or yellow. So to do that, put a function in here called change box background, just like that, and it's going to take in the box. Oops, in the parentheses, taking the box. So then underneath here, we'll create a function, change box background, just like that. Takes in the box, which is an HTML element, and it's going to return nothing. It's just changing the color of the box. So if turn triple equals X, because turn can only be two things, and so that type is really doing work for us up top, that union type. If turn triple equals X, box.classList.replace, and we're going to replace our box class with the class X, and that will change from the animation to the magenta background. If it's not X, it's going to be O, so else box.classList.replace, not remove, replace, box with, not Y. Oh, I keep doing that, X, Y, math. So if it's X, replace it with X. If it's O, replace it with O. So depending on what the turn is, right? So save that. And I think that's gonna work. So let's go over here and look. All right, let's refresh our game. X, yep, so X turns magenta. We'll wait a second because yellow is there. Okay, O should turn it yellow, perfect. X, O, X, O. Winner is O. And now notice the other boxes are still changing colors, right? Which is super cool, and that's the plan. Anything that's unclicked should change colors, and if we click them now, remember we took the event listener off, they still continue to change colors, which is awesome. When we click play again, the entire board should reset, but you're gonna notice it doesn't. So when I do this, yeah, you're gonna see everything's still transitioning colors, but it's all changing colors at different time. Actually, these are not changing at all, which is interesting. So only the ones that were changing are still changing. So we need to fix this so that all these box classes reset themselves and they're all in sync and changing colors at the same time. And that is the last bit of this exercise. So let's refresh and go back to the code. Okay, remember earlier when we talked about we left a comment for the reset boxes animation? This is what we need to do now. So in order to reset all the boxes, we have to kind of, not trick the animation into resetting everything, but I'll show you how it works. So we need to say something like this, const box class, it's going to be type string equals box dot class name. So we're getting the class name from the current box that we're resetting, because the class name could be box, X, or O, depending on what the class we changed to change the background, right? So it could be box, X, or O, and we're just saying it's a string and we're storing it inside a box class. Then we want to remove that particular thing, no matter if it's X, O, or an empty string. We still want to remove it, or the box. So it would be box if it's an empty string, X, or O. We want to we want to remove that class from the box entirely, whatever the case may be. We could have did that with if else, but what we did was we took it and we stored it here, and now we can, no matter which one it is, we can still remove it. So we're going to say box.classList, class name, class list dot remove, and we're going to remove the box class that we just stored in the variable above. Now we need to, this is kind of where we trip it into resetting its animations, and I did some reading on this, and if there's a lot of animation happening and you're resetting it all, this could really slow down performance or cause glitching or things like that. Didn't read too much into the specificity, but we're only resetting these 9 boxes, so it's not a problem. And we want to say, remember, don't over optimize before you need to. You can, but no point in over engineering. Kind of over engineering with Parcel and TypeScript here, but still fun. So anyways, void box dot offset width, okay, and we're calling box dot offset width just as a, this is the way to trip it and reset it. So we're just going to go with that, and then we can re-add the box. So the main idea here is we remove the box class, whatever the case may be, and then we re-add the original box, the class of box down here. So box.classList.add box. So we re-add the original box, the class of box here, whereas we removed it here. And this line in the middle is just to trip something within the code and say, hey, we actually want to reset all these animations. This doesn't have to be box.offset width. There's a couple other options you can use. This is just the one I chose to use. So let's save it. And this should be the last thing, right? So let's go over and let's play ourselves a game or two of tic-tac-toe. So here we go. X, O, X, O, X, O, X, O. Okay, winner is O. You can see there's still one box changing color. And when we click play again, they should all reset to the initial animation, right? So here we go. Okay, and you can see all 9 have reset to their initial animation. Let's do one more time just to make sure it works. Okay, winner is X. Play again. And it all resets and the bottom parts go away, which they're supposed to. So that has been tic-tac-toe. Let's do one more. Oh, got a win, right? So here we go. Okay, perfect. So that has been tic-tac-toe with TypeScript and Parcel. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. And we're going to do more full-length tutorials like this, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.